By the way, on that Nick Suzuki power play goal, Cole Caufield picked up an assist. That's 200 career points for Cole Caufield. He is actually the quickest Montreal Canadiens player since 1995 to 200 career points. We'll get into Cole Caufield and maybe his underrated playmaking a little bit later on. But Campbell, the Canadiens pick up 2 points in the
Saku
standings.
Koivu?
The list I saw, it wasn't a list. It just had the year and the stat.
Okay.
But Koivu in 95 would have been in his rookie season.
Oh, yeah, sorry. You're right. I got the years wrong. Okay, I'm just throwing that out there. But they've won 2 games in a row.
They've won 2 in a row, and now they are 5 points out of a playoff position. They are, according to MoneyPuck.com, a 6% chance to make the playoffs. However, they play against the San Jose Sharks tomorrow. Sharks suck. And they play their 2 games after that against Buffalo. Buffalo sucks. That's a possible 6 points against bad teams. The NHL trade deadline is a week from Friday. What do the Canadiens do if they feel like they have a outside shot at making the postseason?
Yeah, what will that percentage odds be on Monday when they pick up 6 more points and maybe 2-3 points out of a playoff spot?
Yeah. When?
Yeah.
Sure, Campbell. When they pick up the points.
6 points. It's Buffalo. It's San Jose. But my point is, could a win streak here, and that's what the players want. You heard Nick Suzuki after the game against Carolina on the ice when he was interviewed. Of course the players want to win. Marty St. Louis wants to win. But does that change the mentality of Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton heading into the trade deadline next Friday? You know the UFAs. We take a look over our TSN 690 Master Trade Bait board. Evans, Armia, Savard, Dvorak. There's players with contracts that could get moved. But does it change the plans, or has everything been decided prior to? Their line in the sand was the Four Nations face-off. Guys, I didn't like the way we finished it off. We really got to think about the deadline. Could these players change the mind of management of what they do on March 7th?
I'm going to tell you no, Campbell. And
I know you were going to say no. I want to live in a world where the players could. I know the answer is no for you, but I want to live in a world that the players show over the next 3, maybe 4, it goes all the way to Thursday, that Ken Hughes is like, I can't do it. We're too good. We're on a run. We could do this. I don't think it's going to happen, but I want to live in that world.
2 things. Number 1, they have said many times over now that they have a plan and they're sticking to the plan, and the results in the present don't matter as far as the plan is concerned ahead of the deadline. And Campbell, look at this group historically. When they say something, and they say something multiple times, it's what they end up doing. So the fact that they've said this repeatedly means that they have a plan, they're going to stick to the plan. Campbell, that is just the case. Also, it's nice that they go on a run in December, and it's nice that they've won a couple games now, and who knows, maybe this 2-game win streak becomes a 5-game win streak after the 2 games against Buffalo and the game against San Jose. Maybe you're on a 5-game winning streak. You have to evaluate what the Montreal Canadiens have done for the 55 games leading up to the trade deadline, not the 5 games right before. It's the whole bulk of work. Then I think you also have to look at the other teams around you in the standings, and you have to be realistic. Are the Canadiens better than the Rangers? Are the Canadiens better than the Senators? Are the Canadiens better than the Flyers? Are the Canadiens better than the Islanders? Are the Canadiens better than the Blue Jackets? There's just too many teams around there, and you might have the answer is yes for a couple of them. But it has to be that the Canadiens are the 2 best among all those teams that I'm going to ask you, are they better than? There's one saving grace for the Canadiens, maybe, that you can really, if you're a fan, say and clutch on to, we have a shot at this. If you go to tankathon.com, not to do the draft simulator, but to do strength of schedule, because it ranks. It ranks on Tankathon all the strength of schedules.
Yes.
As far as every team in the National Hockey League, all 32 teams in the league.
Where do the Canadiens sit?
The Canadiens have the 31st most difficult schedule.
Okay.
Or
second
I
easiest.
can rephrase that and say they have the second easiest.
Yeah.
schedule.
They have the second easiest schedule. They're playing good hockey coming out of the break. We'll see if that's going to continue against some lower teams. So let's just say you don't want to change your mind on Jake Evans, the negotiation. This was going to happen anyways. Boom, you move on from him. But could you change your mind on other players? Or even you go out and acquire a 5th-round pick for David Savard, and then you want to switch around. So you get a 5th, but it's going to cost you a 3rd or 4th to bring an asset in just for the stretch run to help out fill a roster so you don't have to deplete Laval, who even today just lost another player in their game that they're playing right now. Would you be shocked if the Canadiens brought in a player or part of these deals when you're trading away Evans, Armia, that you're bringing in a player to fill a roster spot that you trust and might be able to keep you afloat?
So
the Canadiens aren't going to be coming back empty-handed without players.
Short answer is I can see what you're talking about. I'll give you a good example.
Could they acquire an asset? That's what I'm
Yes.
asking.
Yes.
Like a tangible, not a.
Yes.
I don't want the Canadiens to go to that deadline and walk away with a 1st-round pick, a 3rd-round pick, and a 7th-round pick, and they lost 4 players.
Listen, I go by history.
Mm-hmm.
And to answer your question, to what you're saying, history shows us
They'll bring in a
the
player.
answer is yes. I'll give you the prime example and something I can see happening here, all right? So if you go back to the first NHL trade deadline under Jeff Gordon and Ken Hughes, at the deadline, they traded Evgeny Dodonov to Dallas. In that trade, the Canadiens did not get a draft pick. They got Denis Gurianov. Remember the Denis Gurianov era in Montreal? Now, it didn't work, Campbell. But Gurianov was a top 15 pick. He lost his way in Dallas, was not a fit there anymore. But the Canadiens saw maybe there's something that they could reignite that fire because Gurianov did show flashes at the beginning of his career that he was going to be a good player. It didn't work, but they tried. I can see them doing something like that with specifically a player like Christian Dvorak, who the contract is too big. Now, if we go back to the Dodonov example again, in that trade, the Canadiens ate 50% of the salary. If the Canadiens turn Christian Dvorak into a just under $2 million player by eating most of the money, maybe they can trade him and then bring in an asset in return that maybe fell out of favor with the team where Christian Dvorak is going.
So
that is a plausible situation where you're going to get an NHL body back in return.
You get an NHL body that possibly could be better than the body that you're giving up. Possibly, not necessarily, but this year,
possibly.
Yeah, you want to be able to.
By
do
the way,
that.
Side note, I thought Dvorak played a great game yesterday. If I'm a scout, like looking at that game, him specifically, and forget about the stats and the scorecard, just watching him play, he looked good.
And Dvorak, Canadiens only have 1 retention spot remaining.
They have one retention spot because they have the Jake Allen retention spot being eaten up from last year's trade.
Well, that is a question. Could the Canadiens change plans leading into the deadline? Or maybe the plan, you said they had a plan all along. Maybe the plan, Mitch, was to wait until the deadline no matter what. And you said, I evaluate the 55 games prior to. So what? I'm going to evaluate all those games. Can I minus 9 of them? The 9-game loss.
No, you can't minus 9 games.
Because I'm not going to minus even the struggles at the beginning of the season, because I like the way that the Canadiens started the season and then evolved into what December and January were. The real hiccup for the Canadiens were that 1-7-1 record right before the Four Nations face-off. Let's just say they go 4-5. And instead of 6 points out of a playoff spot before the deadline, they're 3 points out of deadline. They win 2 games, win 3 games, and by next Wednesday, they're holding on to the final wild card spot. They could win all 4 games and pick up 8 more points and still be 2 points out of a playoff spot.
Sure, and while we're at it, let's take the Flyers' worst 9-game sample out of the equation and the Rangers' worst 9-game sample out of the equation.
But here's my point. If I'm evaluating the whole season for what the Canadiens have provided this year, and I'm not forgetting about the 9 games, but if I minus those 9 games, they are a team that are exactly what they wanted to be in the mix. That 9 game has taken them out of the mix at the Four Nations face-off. This next week, with the game against San Jose and 2 against Buffalo, might put them right back in the mix, 2-3 points out of a playoff spot when they have to make a decision. That's why it's an intriguing question.
Yeah, it's an intriguing question. I'll tell you this right now, Campbell. I think Detroit is better than Montreal. I think Ottawa is better than Montreal. I think the New York Rangers are better than Montreal, and I think Columbus and Philadelphia are equal to Montreal. Well, too many teams that they're competing with.
Well, for this week, Montreal Canadiens just need to be better than San Jose and Buffalo.